Good morning and welcome to Let's Talk Early Years. In studio today is the amazing Sara Williams. Oh, Sara, this is a pinch me moment for me to have you here with me this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Tell us, who is Sara Williams?
So I am a play therapist. I'm a psychology teacher. I am a mom. I am a crisp connoisseur and I am the founder of the Life Stage Lab. So I specialise in all things kids' social, emotional, behavioural development. And I have over 15 years, like I'm showing my age now, but over 15 years worth of experience in helping kids, young people, families and educators navigate the emotional outback that is preparing young people and kids for life in an independent and fulfilling, to have an independent and fulfilling time in the adult world.
It sounds like you're a veteran. Yeah?
Right.
Tell me the why.
It feels like why? The why is amongst the chaos that is adult culture, the keep fit, eat healthy, demands of work life, guilt-ridden, pressure-filled day-to-day that is adult life. We often forget about how magical kids actually are. And there's something so beautiful about kids and so pure and so wholesome. And they're so connected to themselves in a way that adults we lose as we get older. Okay, we care about what other people think of us. We care about how we're perceived. We care about whether people like us. And kids just don't. Kids have just got this beautiful, raw connection with themselves. And when they laugh, it's that deep belly squealing laugh. And when they cry, it's that distraught wailing from their soul crying. And there's just something so beautiful about that because we dampen that as we get older. And so my why is the transition from that to that, from kid culture to adult culture for kids. It's hard. It's really hard. And my mission is to help adults connect to kid culture, to make it as easy as possible for them to make that transition, but also easier for us because we're tired, babes. We're tired. We're tired because the world is a lot. And so I want to make it as easy as possible, as easy and effective as possible for the parent and educator, and as easy and smooth as possible for the kid.
So speaking about smooth, you're going to help us navigate that first day, that minefield. That is oftentimes the scariest or the most anticipated day. You know, we think about it, we talk about it throughout the summer, or we are dreading it as educators, as parents, as the children. So you're going to talk to us, you're going to help us walk through, you're going to journey us on that smooth start to school, that polished nursery director standing at the door, the excited teacher, the new water bottle, the designer backpack, all of that. What is the importance, the significance of that transition?
Okay, so typically when we think of start to school, it's exactly like what you said. A lot of people will think, you know, got to get the lunchbox, the school compliance shoes, the PE kit. And obviously, there's this never-ending list of stuff flying all over the place. And what often gets left behind is the social and emotional baggage that your kid is going to be carrying on that first day. So if we think about it, that first day of school for little people is typically, school or nursery, is typically the very first life stage challenge they're going to face alone, without their parent, without, you know, their parent. That's their ride or die, that's their bestie, that's their person right? And so it's the very first time they're going to be facing quite significant challenges without that person. Now, a lot of the time, kids don't even realise that they're going it alone, right? So that you'll be saying to them, you know, you're going to start school for the first time. And because adults, we don't want to freak them out, we might kind of gloss over the fact that it means you're going to stay and I'm going to go and I'll be back in 4 to 6 hours. They don't really understand that.
Yes.
So even that, understanding that small part of starting school, in kid culture, there's not really much concept of that. They don't really understand the concept of time anyway, very small children. It doesn't mean anything, it's too abstract. And so the first hurdle is that they're being left, right? And if you think about what school is, right, they're going to face challenges. They're going to be facing challenges that require skills that they don't have yet. They're going to need to do things like they're going to need to have basic levels of emotional regulation that they may or may not have yet. They're going to need to know how to have certain communication skills, listening skills. They're going to need to know how to advocate for their needs. They're going to need to know how to negotiate. They're going to need to know how to cooperate. They're going to need to know so many things that these little tiny people might not know yet.
There's a lot. It's a lot.
And they're going to have to do it without their human comfort blanket.
Yes.
And that's huge for them. That's huge. And we as adults forget it because we think, you know, it's just stay at school, I'm going to be back later. But within the context of a kid's life, that's a lifetime, right? They haven't had much go on in their life yet. So that's a really big, significant challenge for them. And what you'll see as an educator is, especially if you're a newbie, you'll get some kids that'll roll through the door and they look like they've done this 8 times before and they'll be perfectly fine. Their parents are at the gate like, oh, bye, and they're like, yeah, peace, and they're off. There's no issue. And then you'll get certain kids that, bless them, are a mess and they're distraught before they've even seen the door and you'll hear them before you see them, right? And that's because of two different things. That's because of a kid's temperament and their experiences. So behaviour is shaped by loads and loads and loads and loads of different things, okay? But you can kind of summarise them down into 2 areas, an individual's temperament and an individual's experience. So when we're talking about temperament, we're talking about things like emotionality is a big one for the first day of school. So when your child so somebody will either have high emotional needs or lower emotional needs, and you can see it from day one in your child, right? So if your child as an infant was the sort of child that when they cry, it's just big and it's just massive, massive feelings, they've got higher emotional needs naturally, okay? If you've got a child that's a bit more sort of like chill and it takes a lot more for them to get a bigger emotional response, you've got a child that's got lower emotional needs. Neither one is better than the other. We need both types of people.
Right.
I'm someone that's highly emotive, and it's led me to have a really successful career because I can really feel the emotions of other people. But you'll find that kids that are higher, have that temperament, and they've got higher emotional needs, are likely to struggle more with the first day of school.
Okay.
Those kids that are like, I'm off, and they're straight in, they might have lower emotional needs. Either one is fine. Either child is going to be successful in school. It's just going to take a bit more scaffolding and a bit more support for a child that has higher emotional needs because it's going to take them longer to feel comfortable.
Right.
Okay? And understanding the kids that we care for in an educational setting, understanding their temperament is a huge tool it's like a huge advantage in knowing how to structure an environment to help them feel comfortable.
Right.
So if we know that a child coming in is a kid that's got higher emotionality and they're going to need more support, they might need more support with regulating their emotions. So we can say to a parent, you know, they were really upset today. I think it would really benefit them having a transitional object, okay? And that a transitional object is something that basically extends the connection that child has with home or their parent. Because don't forget, it's a completely typical, normally healthy sign of emotional development, that a child depends on their caregiver to help them regulate their emotions, that a child will depend on you to help them regulate their emotions as an
You
educator.
mentioned structuring the physical
Yes.
environment. How do we, as leaders in early childhood education, structure that physical environment to make that transition smooth?
Okay, so a big one that I always say is great at the start is if you can, I'm a firm believer, if you can send out to parents, if it's not already part of your procedure, send out about me questionnaires about their child so that you already go in knowing a little bit about what their favourite things are. So that when you introduce them to their cubby or where their things are going to be, there's something that's already a bit of them. There's a sticker of, you know, if they like Bluey, there's a Bluey sticker or something that is a little bit of them. So that straight away, the place where they're putting their belongings is their safe space, is the place, it's their home base, it's something that's a bit of them. And then a task that you can do throughout the day is they get to decorate their home base with whatever it is that is for them. So then straight away you've got a place that they've got ownership over, as simple as the cubby. Another one is, which I see as standards practice in a lot of nurseries and schools, which is excellent, is to have like a feelings corner where feelings are completely normalised. So I actually have one in my house. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll see it. But it's a little corner and it says, and it's just set up and it's got a mirror on the wall so that they can see facial expression. It's got different books about emotions. And I have a sign and it says, all my feelings are okay, right? And it's to emphasise, because a lot of kids will grow up feeling like feeling sad is a bad emotion. It's not. It's okay. It's perfectly acceptable for them to feel sad. It's a hard thing that they're doing.
Right.
And I think as educators as well, this is something that's really hard to deal with, because if we've got a room of 20 kids and they're all distraught, that's really hard on us, right? I mean, we're biologically primed to want to respond to kids when they're crying, and it's uncomfortable, it's physically uncomfortable, and so we just want it to stop. But that's where we need to tune into our skills of emotional regulation and rationalise and be like, you know what, it's okay that they're crying.
Yeah.
Because when a child is in that state of being distraught, and it's a small child, so they've got limited skills of communicating that, the worst thing we can do is try and stop that. We have to hear them.
Yes. So how do we empower them to use their words? You hear this all the time. You know, use your words. Yeah. So how do we empower them to use their words to aptly communicate their feelings in this transition?
Yeah. So this is one that is sometimes deemed a bit controversial, because I am an advocate of when a child is in this state of dysregulation, they're all over the place. It's a bit like when someone's kicking off and we're like, calm down, right? You telling them to use their words in that moment when they're elevated is something that they might not actually be able to do. If they're in such a state of dysregulation that their logic part of their brain isn't engaged, which is typically always if you're in that state, telling them to use their words can actually, it's like adding fuel, escalate. It's like adding fuel to the fire. They're in a place where they can't. So what we actually need to do is provide them with another means of being able to express that doesn't use language. And once they are calmer and more regulated, then we can say, oh, you know, I really understand when you feel like that. We can say, I feel sad, or we can come to the corner and we can sit down and we can blow some bubbles. It's that sort of thing. So it's, in the initial, when they're elevated like that, it is things like having emotion cards where it's facial expressions, real pictures of children with different facial expressions. And it's about giving them that language. So they're crying and be like, I understand. I you know, it's really hard coming to school for the first day. I think you might be feeling a bit sad, and you're pointing out the sad face. And what they'll start to feel is, oh, she or he gets it. They get this. They get me.
Yeah.
And they'll start to calm down. And that it's hard if you've got 8 kids. I mean, touch wood, you haven't got 8 kids all on day one in that position, but it happens. And when it happens like that, It can be more of a circle time activity
Right.
because it's en masse and
Right.
you've got to...
I hear you speaking about community and I hear you speaking about language. And I'm also hearing you saying that for the settling in period, let's forget our idea of how it should look.
100%.
Let's forget about these amazing activities that we want to present to the parents.
Yeah.
And let's focus on that social-emotional skills that we can impart to the children and ourselves, to teach
100%.
ourselves to self-regulate and to teach ourselves that this is the community that I'm serving right at this moment.
100%.
Yeah.
For that transition period, your number one priority as an educator is connection and relationship.
Yeah.
Because until that is there, the learning won't happen.
Yeah.
You know, like if your house is on fire, you don't care about whether you put the washing out, you're just trying to get out of the house, right?
It's the Maslow over Bloom.
100%.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Right.
It's in order for any learning to happen with these beautiful activities that you have spent time planning and making happen, the kids, they first need to feel safe.
Yeah.
And they need to feel secure. And that's physically, that's emotionally, that's externally and internally.
Yeah.
And that takes time, right? Because as much as they'll have had introduction videos or being told about you, or hopefully a parent has prepared them and told them about who you are, and hopefully they've had a bit of a transition day or a play in the classroom, that doesn't always happen. So as much as you know that you're a lovely person and you know you've got all these exciting activities, you've got a kid that's had their whole little life experience being told, don't talk to strangers, don't take sweets off strangers, don't do this, hold my hand. And then they're being shoved into your room and it's like, peace out, kids, you're on your own.
Yes.
Here, sitting there with a stranger and a bunch of kids you don't know for
Yes.
4 to 6 hours. It's huge.
Yeah.
And so some kids will be all right about that because they might have had experiences where they've had that before, or, you know, and they've already built up the neural connections where they're used to that and they know they have certain skills to cope with that. A lot of kids, their first day at school is their first day of experience.
Right. So what are some of those social-emotional skills that they're learning? I want to preempt that by speaking about neuroplasticity,
Yes.
because you mentioned, you know, the neurons' growth.
Yeah.
So talk to me about the skills and then talk to me about the
And
neuroplasticity.
neuroplasticity.
But then also tell us, what is neuroplasticity?
Okay, I'll start with the skills. Okay, so I would say I'd say the biggest thing that is a challenge for kids, the biggest skill that they need to develop is the skill of emotional regulation, right? Because that is what's making them be devastated and stay devastated for a long time, okay? And emotional regulation is basically an individual's ability to bring themselves down from any emotional discomfort or manage their emotions and the behaviour that emotion might trigger. Okay, so adults typically have great skills of emotional regulation, which mean when we're feeling angry, we don't go around punching people in the face on a day-to-day basis because we know how to manage that emotion and inhibit any of those behavioural responses. Now, you'll sometimes see it marketed in the world as self-soothing when you're looking at infants, okay? Emotional regulation is a really complex skill, really complex, okay? And the part of the brain that it sort of governs it is the prefrontal cortex. And that isn't actually even physically fully developed until we're in our early 20s. It's a long, long, long process, okay? And the way that kids develop the ability to regulate their emotions is through something called co-regulation, which basically means using an external, more mature and developed and experienced individual to do it for them. Okay, so that, and typically the easiest way for an adult to do that is just by being present, right? So it's why when babies are sobbing, like newborns and tiny kids, and even my boy who's a toddler, sobbing, if you pick them up, relatively soon they settle down because you being the calm and comforting them that, oh, okay, rubbing on the back, you're an external force to drive that calm,
Right.
okay?
So what are those skills in there? You know, when mommy picks me up this afternoon, what am I saying to her? Me as the teacher, what am I saying to mom?
Okay.
What are the skills that we're learning? Because inevitably, and I think this has been our experience as educators, as leaders, mom's picking him up from school and they want to know, what did he do today? And so how do I communicate to mom that the settling in period is not so much about the doing as it is about the being? So what are those skills that my child is learning in this time, in this transition?
So during the transition period, the skill that that child is learning is to identify the emotion that they're feeling.
Right.
Is the first thing. And they do that by being able to tell you what it feels like. So young kids might say, my tummy hurts. And it's because they might be feeling a bit anxious. So that's a skill. They need to learn what that emotion feels like, and that's huge in that transition period. So they're learning to identify what the emotion feels like and where it is, and then put a name to it. And then they're learning what skills they can use to try and alleviate that feeling. And that is basically what they're learning in that transition period for a long time and beyond, always. But this is their first, typically, exposure to trying to regulate their emotions without that parent present, right? And so they're learning other means of coping with discomfort, is what you're telling parents. Coping with the emotional discomfort of being away from you, and they're doing a great job at it. And the other thing that they're doing, and this is linked to neuroplasticity, is they are having new experiences to strengthen. I didn't even explain what neuroplasticity is. I'll get to the end of that sentence. But they are having new experiences to strengthen the connections in their brain to replace old ones, i.e. they're learning. So neuroplasticity is like the biological process of learning. Okay, so in our brain we have all these neurons and synapses and things and and our experience physically shapes our brain. It's phenomenal. If you're interested in the academics of it, it's a psychologist called Maguire, a female psychologist, so I always have to highlight it when it's female, Eleanor Maguire, in 2000, and she did a study on London taxi drivers. Okay, now London taxi drivers undergo a period of intense training where they have to memorise all the London streets. Okay. And what they found was that the hippocampus, that's the area that is to do with, it will focus on like location and visuals and things like that, has a bigger volume by the time they've come to the end of the training, because their experience of having to drive around here and have all this training, remember it, physically changed their brains. And that is what happens with kids when they're going through this process. So the kids that you are getting have had their brains will be shaped and their neural connections are shaped according to the experiences they have had in childhood, the experiences that their parents have created for them. And those experiences influence how they behave. A bit like playing the piano. The more you practice, your behaviour is influenced. You're better at the piano.
I'm hearing you say that a smooth transition to nursery or to the next class, I'm hearing you say that it's not a day.
No.
It's not an event. I'm hearing you say that it is a transition, it's a movement, it is a process.
It's entirely a process, and it's a long process. It's a long process for some children, and that's okay. Some children, it'll be, like I said, coming in straight away, fine. Some children, it'll be a week, fine. There'll be some children that are still struggling a month later, 2 months later, and that's okay. They just need extra support. They need more experiences of where they are feeling safe and secure in that setting, to replace the old connections where it's this sort of fight or flight response with feeling calm and secure. And you just slowly repeat it. And this is where I'd say it's really important for educators to have parents on board as much as possible. And I know that this is really challenging, because you have some parents that, of course, are really proactive and are really, really involved. And again, variations in people. Sometimes you don't have parents that are as involved. But the more a parent can do at home to upskill their kids and reassure them that even when we are apart, we are still connected,
Yeah.
the easier it is going to be for the educator to emphasize that message.
So I'm hearing again you saying that because we are the skilled professionals as educators, as nursery directors, that we build this relationship, that we
100%.
emphasize in the transition, in the smooth start, that parent partnership.
100%.
And it's for us to extend the knowledge to parents.
Yeah.
How to make the transition smooth, how to have the conversation before starting school, that it's not big school.
Yeah.
That it's, that we don't put these big words to the experience, that we don't make it all about the first day of nursery school, that it's not just that moment, as we've said, So I also heard you saying that the child's experience is an extension of the love, the warmth, the maturity of the educator. How am I going to self-regulate in that moment where perhaps 8 children are crying?
Yeah. And it's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard. So I always say, connect, accept, reflect. Okay, these are the 3 things that I use for regulate.
Say that again.
Connect, accept, reflect.
Yeah.
I'll go through each of them. So the first thing you want to do is connect, okay? And that is with yourself, okay? So the first thing you're going to say is, I'm in a room and there are 15 kids all crying, okay? You're going to breathe is the first thing, okay? You're going to acknowledge that it is completely acceptable for you to feel stressed about that.
Yes.
Because it's an innate biological reflex that it is uncomfortable when kids cry, which is exactly why no one wants to sit next to a family with a baby on a plane.
Right.
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Okay, but we're built that way. They are built to evoke a caregiving response from us. And we are built to want to respond to that caregiving response. And that's exactly what crying is. And it's an amazing tool. They're doing exactly what they are supposed to do.
Yes.
They are saying, I feel physically or emotionally at risk and I am letting somebody know so that I can get a caregiving response.
Yes.
And you are feeling uncomfortable. So that is where you're like, brilliant. My body and my psychology is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. You rationalise it like that.
Right.
Because you get a lot, especially in the educators, we get this thing where we're like, oh, I shouldn't feel like this. No, it's completely acceptable that you feel like this.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
And it's horrible.
And it's okay.
And it's okay. Okay, so you connect with yourself. Okay? Next, you are going to find a point to connect with the kid so that you can zoom into something that you can empathise for. Okay, so let me give you an example. So the other day, my little boy, he's nearly 2, was asking for a banana, okay? And I had to go and get a banana, but I had to, I put it on a shelf because there was some ants, and I put it on my shelf, so I had to get the step ladder to go and get the banana off the top shelf to then peel it. And it was all taking too long for him. Yeah, in his toddler world. And he was heartbroken and he was sobbing because it was taking too long for me to get this banana, right? Now, in my mind, I was like, this is annoying. It's a reality. It's annoying that he's kicking off when I'm getting it, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, right, I need to regulate because it's been, when it's been a long day, and you get it as educators, it's been a long day, you've got a lot on. The last thing you need is a small child crying about a banana, right? So you need to regulate. So I say to myself, right, it's okay that he's expressing this. It's okay that I feel a little bit annoyed about that. How am I going to connect to that experience? Actually, I've had an experience where I've been in a restaurant and I've seen a waiter walking past with food and I've thought it's mine and I've gotten really excited and then they walk straight past me. And I've had this little pang of, disappointment. Yeah. But I'm an adult and I can regulate that emotion.
Yes.
That's a little person that doesn't know how to regulate that.
They don't have the skills yet.
That's completely acceptable that that's his response. It's normal. Yeah. And that's what we have to do, find a point to connect, and it stops us from losing it, right?
Yes.
So when a kid is coming in and they are devastated because that parent has left, right? And they're crying. And we're thinking, gosh, you know, your nerves are on edge because you're like, I really need them to stop. You have to find a point of connection. Think about your first day when you started work at that school. How did that feel for you? You know, like even me coming here, I do podcasts all the time and I had a bit of a nervy belly walking up the stairs. But I know how to handle that.
Yes.
These little people don't.
Yes.
So you have to find a point of connection to
Yes.
connect. So you've got connect. The next thing is accept. Now, this is something that I'm a huge, huge advocate of, and it's radical acceptance, okay? And what I mean by that is, if a child is there and they are sobbing and you're trying to think of, you know, how can I manage this classroom with all these kids crying? You would just accept that this is what it is like right now.
Yes.
It's not going to be like that forever.
Yes.
But right now, this is what it is. This is how this child is choosing to express themselves.
Right.
And it's okay.
I'm hearing you say that I need to remove that expectation that I've put on
100%.
myself. Because I don't think that anybody has said to the educator, to the nursery director, this is how it should be. I think this is an expectation we're putting on ourselves that it should run smoothly.
Yeah.
Nobody should be crying. It should all be fine.
Yeah.
I should be capable. I should be able to manage. So I hear you saying that it is what it is. I'm going to take some time to self-regulate,
Yeah.
to accept this moment as it is, and I'm going to proceed calmly
100%.
as much as I can.
100%.
Yeah.
And calmly is key. And the reason, this is why it's so important for why I say that these 3 steps, because there's also something called emotional contagion. Now, emotional contagion is, again, something that kids are inbuilt with. They're really good at it. So if you think about it, kids are primed to pick up on what's going on around them, particularly the emotions and energies of other people. Because they have limited comprehension skills, their ability to tune in to the energies of what's going on around them is heightened, more so than adults. This is why you get kids that will be like, randomly dislike a person and you've got no idea what's going on. They're picking up on something that's making them uncomfortable. 100%.
Yeah.
They're picking up on the vibes.
Yeah.
If you are anxious and you're stressy, which again, it will be a completely normal response.
Yes.
Typical.
Yes.
If you are exuding that, this child that is already heightened, their fight or flight is already activated, they're going to think, there is something here that is making me feel like I need to feel like this.
Yes.
I don't feel settled.
So I need to bring the calm.
You as an educator, dictate the energy of that room.
Right. So I bring the weather.
You
I
bring
the
the weather.
sunshine or I bring the rain.
100%.
So 3 points. You spoke about connect, accept. What's the last one?
Reflect.
Reflect.
Okay. So at one point, people will calm down. Okay, at one point these kids will be calmer, not necessarily happy and content, but that's okay. They will be calmer, okay? Or they'll stop crying for a break, okay? And they might go back to it afterwards. But at the end of the day, when the day is done and they've gone home, think, okay, let me reflect on what happened. How did I feel in that moment? What was the energy that I was putting out? How can I connect to that kid's experience more? How can I help that child feel more in control and more aware of what the expectations are moving forward? Your goal as an educator is to try and make that child or create experiences within the classroom and opportunities for that child to feel in control and safe and in the loop. And by that, I mean expectations.
Yeah.
So have I been reminding them of what the visual timetable is so they know what's coming next? Because kids, like I said, time is abstract. They don't understand things.
So it's what's next?
What's next?
What's next?
What's next?
Yes.
What's next? Reminders. Reminders that, you know, home time is coming soon and they're going to see mum or dad, they're going to be back, or nanny, and they're going to be back to collect them. They need visual step by step and they need lots of reminding of that. Okay, so you're reflecting, okay, where can I increase, it's 2 things, where can I increase the connection to their source of the easiest form of emotional regulation, and how can I increase the opportunity for them to develop the skill of being able to do it themselves.
Right. So this is my personal and professional reflection at the end of the day. This has been an enlightening conversation. You've brought such a wonderful energy to the space today. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank
Last
you.
words.
Yes. My last words are, I was a child at home when I was younger that didn't always feel safe, that didn't always feel cared for, okay? Now for me, going to school was a place, I still remember her name, Mrs. Green, my first teacher. Mrs. Green made me feel safe and loved and important. That is your role as educators, okay? Yeah, they're going to learn amazing things with you academically, but that social and emotional role, don't forget how important that is. Because now at 33 years of age, I don't remember what activity I did lesson 2 in preschool, but I remember Mrs. Green. And you don't know the environment that those kids are coming from. You don't know what their situation is. But you have the most important role, and it's such a privilege that 30 years later, you will have a child that remembers you in the way that I remember Mrs. Green. So don't ever let what society has to say about nursery teachers or preschool teachers or educators in general take away from how life-changing your role is. And I just think it's really important to remember that. You're a massive part of people's lives.
Sarah Williams, thank you so much. I
Thank you for having me.
believe that the smooth start is possible.
100% it's possible.
Thank you. If you've enjoyed our conversation here on Let's Talk Early Years, I would love for you to follow us on Instagram. Find us wherever you find your favorite podcast, on Apple, on Spotify, on YouTube. Rate, subscribe, follow. We would love to hear from you. Send us your reviews. They will help to make us better. Thank you.